All right, I got a video for you guys. This is just an anime video in general, right? So we have solos, duos, trios, and squads in anime. But we got to understand there's a definition or an example of these type of things in anime, in shonen specifically, I guess, right? I've compiled, the definition of what each of these four things is, right? And it's simple. You can tell just by like what I'm about to tell you. You will be in agreement. You won't get sideways too much. You'll probably agree with this. So a solo act, right? A solo. That is one guy. That's an individual. That's like me, the Green Angel, doing my thing. I don't have people around me all the time. I don't do shit with other people. One day I'll be on, podcasts and, you know, shit like that. But for now, I'm not doing that, right? That's a solo act, right? We got, solo. That's one person, right? Who solos? Who's the definition of that? We ain't talking power scaling now. We're talking that, a little bit of that, but like how they move. They don't have, when shit pops off, they're doing the shit themselves. It's Saitama, believe it or not. He's the actual definition of a solo act, right? In his world, he's the guy who, man, he can't be beat. He's the One Punch Man, right? We got him as the definition of a solo act in anime, or the solo. Now, let's go to the duo, or you can call it a duet, but, I usually, or me at least, I think of a duet as a, we're singing, and that's a duet. But you can call it that if you want to, but I call it a duo, right? So the duo is when you have two individuals coming together for a common goal, usually defeating a villain of like, great evil, great, they bring great destruction upon others, the world as a whole or the universe as a whole. And why do I say that? Because I say that to say the definition of a duo in anime is Goku and Vegeta. Now I know Sasuke and Naruto, and you might be like, but Sasuke and Naruto. And I was thinking that too myself, but then I was like, hold on. What the fuck did these boys do together? They fought each other. They linked up. After they found Frieza, they didn't team up to fight Frieza. They teamed up and fought against Majin Buu together. They used Potara Fusion in Dragon Ball Z against Super Buu. Then they used it in the movie. They used not Potara Fusion, but Metamorium Fusion. They used both types of fusion. You gotta be like, kind of friends with somebody to do some shit like that. You ain't just gonna fuse with somebody just on the like, hey, you look good enough, let's fuse. No, you gotta know somebody, you gotta know what they're, packing power or what. What kind of, moves they got. They have to be of, similar things. They're both Saiyans, they both are powerful, they'll both fight for their families and defend this universe, right? They've done that on many occasions. Not just in Dragon Ball Z, but in Dragon Ball Super. Against Zamasu, they used the Potara earrings. They used Metamorium Fusion against Broly. And they were also fighting side by side before that happened against Broly. If you remember, showing development in Vegeta's character and also, Goku, being like, the guy he is, right? But they're the definition of a duo in anime. They've been doing that shit, before, Naruto and Sasuke. I have to break some hearts on that one. Now the trio, come on, man. You know what the trio is. The trio is fucking Monkey D. Luffy, captain of the Straw Hat Pirates. Roronoa Zoro, the swordsman and the right-hand man of Straw Hat Luffy. Basically the vice captain. Then we have, the cook, Blackleg Sanji Vinsmoke. He's the left-hand man, and that's the monster trio. Look that shit up if you don't believe in it. That is the definition of a trio. Three people coming together under, one flag or under, similar ideals and coming together for, common goals. Luffy, and specifically, there's usually somebody in the group that has more power, right? That'd be Luffy. He established his group. He's like, I'm the Straw Hat Pirate. I need people on my crew. Sanji wants to find the All Blue. He sees that he can achieve that goal because his goal and Luffy's goal align. Luffy's trying to be king of the pirates. Zoro came in first, though. That's why he's the right-hand man. Zoro wants to be the world's most powerful swordsman, the strongest swordsman, the best swordsman the world's ever seen. And being outside Luffy, who kind of attracts, danger and trouble, he has to be there as a sword, a shield for Luffy. And he's like, sure, I'm bound to find him if I travel with you. Him being Mihawk, right? Because in order to become the strongest in the world, you have to beat the strongest in the world. And, things happen and they're still together, even after all this fucking time, right? The anime's been going on for 26 years. We still got, and it's an ongoing anime. It ain't done yet, y'all. These guys are, locked the fuck in, right? Together. The loyalty's, kind of unshakable, right? They have their ups and downs still because you have more people involved. So, of course, Zoro and Sanji butt heads. But ultimately, Luffy as a captain comes in and is like, hey, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, and you're going to, make merry, and you're going to do right by your captain, right? And they say yes. And they make that shit work. And that's the definition of a trio in anime. That's the Straw Hat Pirates top 3. Now, the definition of a squad, this is where you might also get sideways with me. Let's look at the word squad, right? Squad. S-Q-U-A. What's another word that has that? Square. Now let's look at a square, guys. That's one corner, another corner, another corner, another corner. 4 corners and 4 sides. So what does that tell you about the word squad? Squad is a group of 4 people. That is what a squad is. Don't try to fucking tell me otherwise. That is exactly what it is. I'm your daddy now, because you gotta listen. The definition of a squad in anime, y'all, is the Urameshi team from Yu Yu Hakusho. The members being Kazuma Kuwabara, Suichi Minamino, aka Kurama, Hiei the Amiko, and Yusuke Urameshi. They ran shit up in the Dark Tournament. They did that shit beforehand. They ran shit up with the 4 Saint Beats. They worked together. And then, again, when you have more people in a group, it can be a little more chaotic. But, they ultimately, know what the fuck they're there for. All 4 of them understand their importance. They have to, get the job done. Or the, world will be, in shambles, essentially, right? And they all understand this to some degree. In different ways, or basically in the same way, because they're doing that shit. They're all putting their lives on the line. And Yusuke is their captain. He's their, leader. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. They might not get along all the time, but they have that person in the group. That's Kurama. He comes in and he's like kind of an older brother. He's a person of wisdom. Tries to get them to calm the fuck down. He even, helps Yusuke out. Sometimes Yusuke is about to go the fuck off on somebody. He has that Aries energy, right? And he's like, hey man, let's, calm down and think of a strategy that is better than that, It's kind of there like that. He's there like that for Hiei. And also for Kuwabara, who's also, a little bit unsure sometimes or might not get certain things. He's more human than the rest of them. But even Kuwabara has his little thing where he can cut through dimension. He has the dimension sword. Each person in the group has their strength. Where, somebody's weak, another person makes up for that, right? And that's what the squad does, and it works well. And, at the end of Yu Yu Hakusho, Hiei was doing his own thing, but they understood who Hiei was. They're like, Hiei loves being a demon. He don't give a fuck about being a demon. Even if we're the ones he likes, he's going to stay there and do what he does. But I say all that to say that is the definition of a solo, a duo, a trio, and a squad. Solo, Saitama. Duo, Goku and Vegeta. Trio, the Monster Trio. Luffy, Sanji, Zoro. And squad, team Urameshi. Be cool, claw on the corner, and let me know if you learned something or not from this.